morning. Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes on the Pin Down over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel with Blake Silverman, you absolutely should be. Obviously, guys, you should be subscribed and reading to everything Omari is writing on the Detroit Free Press. And here this morning, I have my in notes and analysis on the Motor City Hoops Substack. And not long after this recording, I will record and post a breakdown of Jalen Duren's offensive night on Saturday night against the Dallas Mavericks in Mexico City. So make sure you're subscribed over there, completely free. I will start off with this, O2. We talked about this pre-recording. Thank God for daylight savings time, because that gave me an hour of sleep I would not have gotten otherwise that I absolutely would have needed for this Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of daylight savings time, just like as a concept, because I like when the sun sets later, and now the sun's going to set at like 5:30, and that's going to suck. But along with that, it could have timed better this year. I mean, you have a 10 p.m. game that didn't tip to almost 10:30 because of a clock issue. And, it was nice, and I was filing my story at, 12-something in the morning, 1 a.m., whatever. Like, oh, I get an extra hour of sleep tonight. So it's like a 9 p.m. start, which is a very big difference. So shout out to daylight savings this one time only. This is the first time in my life I'm never going to say that.
Wes says a 4:45 sunset here in Chicago. That's crazy, man. That is
depressing.
Yeah. DFizz313 says, good morning. What up, doe? Thank you for everybody who's joining us here this morning. If you have a question, a topic, anything like that, drop it in the chat. We're always scouring that. Myself, Wes, O2. So we'll start it. We'll either bring it up on the screen as we're talking, or we'll bring it up later. But since we last recorded, 2 games, 2 Pistons wins. Obviously not a ton of action because of the Mexico City game and allowing the team to travel and all of that. You know how I like to do this, O2. I want the sky-high view of this team before we get into the minutia and the nuance. I will give mine real quick. Usually I don't start. I'm going to start with this. I feel like Detroit has set a pretty high floor. I think we can be pretty confident in the floor of this team being a solid, competent, competitive basketball team. And I know for some people that may be like, duh, or that's, not a very high expectation. But after we watched for multiple years, that is a good thing to feel about a team. And we saw it last year. And I still maybe have some PTSD over those years, O2, but I feel like this team at the very least is going to be all of those things I just said. So before you give your mile-high view of this team right now, what do you think about that? I don't know what I think about the ceiling just yet, but I feel like the floor is pretty good for this team, especially in an East that is wide open, which I also want to talk about at some point.
Yeah, I think these last 2 games were, I don't want to say coin flip games, but coming into the season, you see those 2, and it's like, okay, these are going to be at the very minimum, 2 competitive games. Orlando hasn't found their footing, but obviously they're very talented, and then you get Dallas without AD, which helps. But I mean, they've still got size. They've got Cooper Flagg. They've got some depth. So for this Pistons team, I think what we've seen is that they may not always start well, even though they did last night in Mexico, but they don't always start well, but they could finish. And, they may start the game at 80. Did they start the game at 90? Or even if they started at 100, by the time you get to the fourth quarter, they're going like 110, 115. And, I think that they could wear teams down over the course of the game. They've also had a good amount of offensive creation, which I know we'll talk about later. But I would agree that they have a high floor. I think it's better for a team to start well and finish poorly as they have in the past. Like now, once they get going, they've gone toe-to-toe with everybody they've played so far.
So just to give some perspective on where they're at right now, after last night's game, NBA.com actually does a really nice updating stuff fairly quickly. They have a 114.3 offensive rating, which puts them 18th in the NBA. They have a 111.3 defensive rating, which puts them 7th in the NBA. That's a net rating of 3, which puts them 10th in the NBA. In the East, the teams better than them are Miami, who's 3-2, Chicago, who's 5-0, the Bucks at 4-2, the Sixers at 4-1. So all in all, through 6 games, this is a really nice start for the Detroit Pistons. I know they had the one just stinker of a game. I saw you on Twitter kind of not defending them, but just defending the fact that in an 82 game season, you have those type of games. So I think through 6, and again, we'll get into the new, I see like Karis LeVert conversation in the comments. I think we need to talk about him. Obviously, we're going to talk about Duren's game, all of that. But just in terms of where this team is at, without Jaden Ivey at all, we have seen relative health from the rest of the roster outside of Karis LeVert, who has only played in 3 of the 6 games. But I feel good about where the team is at and then where they can go. Again, I'm still trying to workshop where the ceiling is at, but 4-2, positive net rating, top 10 in defense. It just seems like a team that knows who they are, and that sets a very high floor. So I at least wanted to start there. What's your mile high view on top of anything else that we've already talked about?
I mean, I think I'm pretty much at lockstep that this team has a pretty high baseline, where it seems like outside of the odd night, like we saw against Cleveland, they're certainly going to bring it. But I think more importantly, they do have enough on the roster already to kind of problem solve as they go. And we'll get more into this, but I've been impressed just seeing, Asar step up offensively in certain games. But it's been JD the last 2 games. So that's really more than anything. I think it's just the baseline competition level is also younger guys showing more, being aggressive, stepping up. So just of all the boxes you want to see checked this early in the season, I think that those are the most important ones that they've done that so far.
Chuck says, can't proclaim a ceiling until we see what Ivy brings to the table. I 1,000% agree. I think that's exactly right. It sucks that we're going to have to wait this long to see that, but I think that that's fair. I want to go ahead and get to this. Obviously, a lot of positives, the Cade Cunningham, the Jalen Duren, but Karis LeVert is like a major conversation right now. And Chili brings up something that's fair. Karis getting hate for a guy playing with a bum hammy. Bryce, how much lift can you get if one leg is gimped? Fair. To be fair, I couldn't get any lift anyway. So you calling me out there it wouldn't change my game. I played Division I basketball with a torn ACL. It didn't change my game because I couldn't move anyway. No, I understand your point here. I guess my thing is it not fair to at least bring up that he's not providing value though? And so my thing would be in 0-2, maybe, listen, if he's playing through something, then I respect him. And I respect that he's trying to. But my thing is 0-2, if this is what if he's still hurt, and he's trying to play through it, and this is all he can do, then he needs to sit and get healthy. If he just doesn't have his legs under him because of the injury, and this is kind of the ramp back period, then I can live through that. That's cool. But I still think it's fair to at least say that he's not providing a ton of value right now. Like, this is what we do. We talk about who's playing well, who's not playing well. Right now, I think it's fair to say that Karis in his 3 games has not provided what we expected or what this team necessarily needs. Now, is there other nuance to that conversation? I do think it's fair to talk about that, and maybe you can give some more perspective on the injury, the timeline, maybe what he is or is not dealing with.
Yeah, one, if the hammy were still bothering him, I don't think he'd be playing. That's just one thing teams don't mess with. His hamstring injuries, and they sat him the first few games. Obviously because of that, he missed some preseason. I don't think if they were limiting him to the point where it were impacting his play, he would be out there. So I'll start there. I think it's early. I think anytime you have, somebody new come onto the team, there's going to be an adjustment period. Like we saw Duncan take a few good games to get adjusted, offensively. He kind of struggled in preseason, and then he was 0-5 in the opener against the Bulls. But since then, I think he's 15 of 32 from 3. I checked last night, and even with the 0-5 performance, he's still above 40% from 3 right now on pretty decent volume. Has it been perfect? No, but you're starting to at least figure out the offensive side, with him. And I think his shot quality is going up. And with Karis, it just, it feels like that filling out process is just starting, where he doesn't really know where he fits in with the offense yet. They're figuring out how to incorporate him because he's not a spot up type of guy. He's somebody who's going to need the ball, I think, in some capacity. And he took some pull-up jumpers last night. I think one fell, but it's just very much to me looked like somebody who's trying to find a rhythm, in an offense that's still trying to figure out how to incorporate him as well. And that's just like Duncan. I think that's going to be a filling out process. He missed a lot of preseason, and with that comes some at camp. So I'd love to revisit this in like a week. 2 weeks, but he's played 3 games, and it's been rough so far, but I think that could change in the next few weeks.
I think that's right. I think it's fair to say that right now he's not providing what maybe my expectations were too high. I defended the Karis LeVert signing and move this offseason from a lot of people who didn't like it. So I had very high expectations. The nuances, the minutia, the things I think to defend him is I do think that there's a ramp up, especially when you're on a new team and you have dealt with an injury. I do think that the expectations almost are even higher because of the Jaden Ivey injury, O2, as this team searches for that number 2 guy. And especially in the backcourt, it's like, okay, well, it needs to be Karis. And so now the expectations almost went too far. And then the other thing I'll say is I'm going to bring this up on Game Theory tonight in terms of, I'm going to phrase it as, is this just integration or is it something to worry about? But Karis wasn't the only guy. I was going to bring up Karis with Detroit, but we're seeing this with Desmond Bane in Orlando. We're seeing this with Bradley Beal with the Clippers. We're seeing this with Cam Johnson in Denver. Guys and all of that's a wide range of players in terms of their roles and their names and who they've been in this league. But it's not always easy to just roll into a new team and then figure things out. And especially where Karis isn't, as you mentioned, just this spot up catch and shoot guy. If he was just going to do that, I think it would be easier. I think right now he's trying to figure out where he can really provide the most value on the offensive end. I do think right now it's just like, man, we could really use 15 a game from Karis LeVert with Jaden Ivey out, and he hasn't been able to find that yet. It's exactly right. All of this is small sample still, and especially with him where it's only been 3 games, I am excited to see what it looks like 2 weeks from now, where maybe that ramp up period, he's feeling better, he's figuring out where his shots are and all of that.
Yeah, it's going to take time. I think we've seen the Pistons lean on what they know, and that's been a lot of Cade, Duren pick and roll. We've seen Asar step into the creation a little bit. And I just think when Karis has had the ball, there's been like a lot of quick, pull up or like give the ball up, right? So just whatever flow needs to be in there, it just isn't there yet. So, like I said, I think it'll get better as time goes. I think there is a need, like you said, for that 14 to 15 points per game, especially with the second unit where, sometimes you have lineups that are a bit spacing challenged. You probably just need a guy who can just go out and kind of get a bucket however he gets it. So we'll see how that evolves. Somebody just brought up a good point that it's probably a bit easier with a spot up 3-point shooter as opposed to a guy like Karis, and I agree with that as well. That's why it's going to take time. So, if this is still happening in December, then or even like late November, then maybe it's like, okay, let's have a conversation here. But he's a guy with a long established body of work. We know what he could do. Theoretically, it should work with this team. So, something that they'll try to iron out.
All right, let's just stay with the comments right here, and then we'll get to Duren and Cade, which was the plan to start off with those guys. But sorry, Wes, as you know, sometimes things get derailed. Max, asks, is the lack of overall 3-point shooting concerning you guys? What changes could help it? It felt like yesterday the Mavs kept it close with their 3-point shooting. I mean, D'Angelo Russell single-handedly kept that thing close. That was the ultimate, this is a different corner for the Pistons, because I just had nightmares of the Kyle Kuzma, Kelly Oubre, those type of guys games where you think you're going to win a game and then those guys go crazy, and that's what D'Angelo Russell was doing. Asar shut that off a little bit in the fourth quarter. Let me ask you this before you touch on the question, O2. Where do you think the Pistons rank in percentage of field goal attempts from 3-point line? Because this is a different number than just 3-point attempts. 3-point attempts can be deceiving based on pace of play and stuff like that. So where do you think the Detroit Pistons rank in the NBA in terms of their field goal attempts that are 3-pointers?
I would guess they're in the 20 to 25 range.
They are dead last. They are 30 in the NBA.
Really? Wow. Okay.
33.9. Which obviously means they're the number 1 team in terms of field goal attempts that are 2-pointers. And this is an attempt. So I was going to look, they're top 10 in terms of percentage of their points that come from the free throw line. But yeah, so for example, Cleveland is number 1. Like Cleveland, Boston, the Knicks, the Suns, the Warriors, almost half of their field goal attempts come from the free throw line. 15th is the Philadelphia 76ers. So, middle of the NBA. 42% of their field goal attempts come from the 3-point line. Detroit is last at 33.9. Just a few other teams down here, the Kings, the Rockets, the Raptors, the Magic. So it's not just a percentage thing, it's a attempts thing. Is this concerning to you? Because at the same time of all of this, as I mentioned, this team is 18th in offensive rating. So is this a big concern to you?
No, well, I would say it's like probably the same level of concern as it was for me coming into the season. I don't think anything from the first 6 games has altered that. Obviously, it's encouraging that they are 4-2 in spite of only taking 1/3 of their shots from 3. And I say that cheekily a little bit because now you have teams taking more than half of their shots from 3. I think Boston did last year, and I'm sure more teams will join them in that this year. But last night, I thought was actually like the epitome of that conversation, right? Like how efficient do you have to be inside to kind of offset the extra amount of threes teams are taking against you, because it did just kind of seem like a math game between the Pistons and Mavs at a certain point. Pistons are finishing everything inside. I think they probably tripled the points inside the paint that Dallas had, but Dallas had, more than double the 3-point attempts and double the makes. And they were also better at the free throw line because the Pistons didn't have a great night at the line. And I think that just really reduces your margin for error. You pretty much have to have a great defensive fourth quarter, I think, to survive with that style of play. And that's what they did. They helped them to, I believe, 4 of 16 shooting. And, I think with the altitude, like they just kind of wore Dallas down over the course of the game a bit. And obviously, D'Angelo Russell was the only guy who was really hitting shots from them anyway. So that helped. But long story short, it does concern me. But also, I think we're seeing that they can survive. And also, that's an issue that will probably get better as guys like Ivy and Sasser come back. So concerning, yes. Like, is it a bigger concern for me right now? No, because they've still figured out how to win.
Chili says, yeah, Ivy helps with the threes. I agree. And Sasser, I think Sasser's injury on top of the Ivy injury, on top of the LeVert injury, I think kind of goes underappreciated with some of this in regards to where Detroit is at. People bring up the spacing looking okay last night. I do have a very specific clip coming in the Jalen Duren breakdown where I talk about that. Him and Asar, who I have been the biggest voice in saying, hey, can these guys play together? They love to occupy the same space. There's a really nuanced clip, and it doesn't seem like a lotto too, and I don't want to completely spoil it, but they're in the game together, and neither of them are outside the 3-point line, but they figure out how not to be in the same spot, forcing the defender to choose one or the other, and Duren gets a bucket. So maybe some of those things are being figured out. Here's some other just fun stats. I think that kind of explains why this team is where they are in terms of offensive rating. You want to guess where we talked about the 2-point attempts, right? You want to guess where they're at in 2-point percentage on the season?
Yeah, they got to be top 10. But I would guess higher than that.
26th.
Wait, really?
They're one of the worst teams in the NBA in 2-point percentage while taking all of these 2-point attempts.
Hey, I thought Duren and Asar would offset that, because I know some of their guys probably aren't finishing well. But yeah,
to me though, I look at that as a positive thing. You're 4-2. You're trying to dominate inside the 3-point line, and you're missing shots. And I do think there is. I walk away from a lot of games going, man, they left some points on the board there. They left some points on the board there. They are 18th in 3-point percentage. And then if you go to free throw percentage, guess where they're at in free throw percentage? They're 7th in just sheer attempts. This doesn't account for pace and field goal attempts overall. So obviously a team that gets...
That's tough because Tobias hasn't missed, but guys like Asar have struggled a bit. So
23rd. They're 23rd. So
okay. I thought they would have been a little bit higher than that too.
My point is they get to the free throw line a lot, but they're not making free throws yet. They get a bunch of 2-point attempts. They're leaning into that, but their 2-point percentage isn't very good. I just think that there's real room to grow here. I guess I'm not trying to be negative. I know this may come off negative to people, I'm truly trying to make a positive point in terms of 4-2, 18th in offensive rating. Cade is shooting awful from the field right now, and Jaden Ivey hasn't played. And you're like, those percentages I don't think are going to get lower for the team from 2-point or the free throw line. That's encouraging to me, right? Like, I think if you talk about a ceiling or something like that, I think that's encouraging. So, yes, Chuck says it best. So much room for growth. I got a long way to a short point. Chuck summed it up in 2, 4, 7 words. They have so much room for growth. We're going to go to break. When we come back, let's finally talk about Jalen Duren's big night.
All right, we're back with segment 2. We're going to talk about Jalen Duren, who had a career high 31 points with 10 rebounds, and just like you would have thought Dallas didn't have an opposing player over 6'7", the way like Duren was just constantly wide open and, just finishing everything down there, which again gets into, man, how are they so bad in the paint when, it seemed like Duren was like 15 for 17 or something last night. Like that doesn't add up, but Duren was great. Bryce, I want to hear your initial takeaways from what he did last night.
No, he was awesome. Like I said, I'm going to do a breakdown on this because I thought his play finishing is important to show the nuance. So he had some in transition where he drove the transition opportunity either with a defensive play or a defensive rebound. There's 2 really, really good examples of that. One where he doesn't go to contest the shot at the rim 0-2, and that allows him to come down with the defensive board, and then he gets out in defensive transition. He got some in ball screens, but I think the most impressive thing he did last night was just as an off-the-ball mover, spacing to certain spots on the court and then cutting at the right time off of Dallas's double teams. And listen, guys, Dallas was not good defensively. It was D'Angelo Russell, for all of his scoring, is not good on the defensive end. Gafford only played how many ever minutes, so then they're going Dwight Powell. They weren't very good. In general, their defensive rating actually isn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be. They didn't tag on the rolls very well, but Jalen Duren took advantage of it. And that's what's important to highlight here is he was efficient. And as OG, unnamed YouTube user, says, Duren drawing fouls is a big deal if he can keep this up. And that is thing. I made note of this. I don't know if it was in this game or the game before. The underrated aspect of that 0-2 is think about the foul trouble he can draw on opposing bigs. Those guys naturally get in more foul trouble in general. But if Duren's drawing fouls, either with his isolation drives or after an offensive rebound or whatever, that's impactful also if you can get deeper into their rotation at the center spot. So huge game for him. I think the defense continues to be good, not anywhere close to what Isaiah Stewart is, which we're going to talk about at some point, even if it's just real quickly at the end. But the defense is good enough right now. I'd have to decide whether I think it's good yet or not. That might be a little strong. But the play finishing was incredible last night.
Yeah. At what point does hashtag contract year Duren become a thing, right? No, he was great. You mentioned the off-ball cutting, which just the variety of ways he could continue to apply pressure to the rim outside of just being a pick-and-roll lob threat. I think it's really impressive. And it also helps when you have guys like Asar who, are good. Like you mentioned, like 2 guys just not being in each other's way. You could actually, like, it helps when, you have multiple guys who could make those quick reads. Cade had 18 assists and Duren was a massive part of that, just with the way he kept getting open on his pick and roll attempts. I also thought he had a good night passing the ball. Zero turnovers. He only had 2 assists, but
he was good out of the short roll.
I think he had one in the first or second quarter to Tobias in the corner that just didn't fall. But they know how teams are going to defend Cade. They're bringing up 2 defenders in ball screens. So, Duren knows exactly what he has to do. And, sometimes you do think, man, if they just had like a second shooter out there, like it would just be like the 3-point conversation with this team would just be a completely different story. But that's just such an effective weapon for Duren that he could use to keep defenses honest. And, Yeah, but he's just bigger and stronger than everybody down there, and has the leaping ability and has the sense of timing and everything else. I think you're seeing him understand, just how gifted he is, in all of those areas, and that like he really can just dish out punishment to opposing teams. So his aggression and confidence down there, I think, has taken a jump.
Wes says 0 turnovers is huge. Duren was leading the team per 100 in turnovers before last night. Yes, per 100 more turnovers than Cade Cunningham going into last night's game. YouTube user says Duren's defense has probably been neutral for a center this season. I think I'd agree with that. Great flashes, boneheaded plays. I think when you account for what you want your center to be, I think that's probably fair, which is a growth, because I think previous to the end of last season, I would say Duren was a negative defensively for a center. So you want him to be more than a neutral, but neutral is I'll take it for right now. DFizz313 says JD has to be better with creating his own shot signature moves. I will agree with this in terms of post-ups. I do think if they're going to lean into throwing the ball to him in the post, I would like to see him go be able to get a bucket. And I think especially right now, being able to do that a few times a game, just getting like transition post position and then a quick touch and then showing some footwork or a left-hand finish or something like that. Omari, I want to go back to the 2-point conversation, because I weren't saying you were questioning it. You were just like, man, I wonder. So Cade, who obviously has the most 2-point attempts, is at 46.6% from 2. Asar, who's second on the team in 2-point attempts, is only at 50.8. So while Asar may finish at the rim, think about how much he struggled at times in that short mid-range area. Duren's is obviously awesome, but here are some of the two guys that really bring it down. Tobias is also just at 46% on 7 attempts, and Stewart is at 45% on 5 attempts. And then not to like bring Karis LeVert back into the conversation, but Karis is at 33% on 4 attempts. So like those are just some of the numbers there just to back up that low 2-point percentage as a team.
Yeah, that's interesting because Stu, was good at the rim last season, and previously he had been a bit on the lower end for a center. So I'm curious to see if that goes back up. But I also just think some of the trade-off of, Stu, taking more threes, especially the court a bit more, is that he's going to, I think that's going to put more pressure on him to kind of, handle the ball and get inside a bit. And maybe that's part of what's knocking that down a bit. And also just some of the spacing issues. I think if he's trying to finish layups in a crowd, that's different compared to if he's out there with, closer to the situation they had last year, spacing wise. So, I would have thought Tobias would be a bit higher too. Definitely, absolutely thought they would have been higher in 2-point percentage, just considering the amount of shots that they take down there.
YouTube user says post-ups in the half court are a dead form of offense for center-on-center matchups. I agree. I do think centers, even in 2025-26, need to be able to take advantage of cross matches and switches, though. You have to be, if a team's just going to switch, then you got to be able to roll into the post and take advantage of advantageous matchups. Okay, guys, we're almost 30 minutes in and we haven't talked about Cade Cunningham yet. So this is blasphemy. This is something we do all the time, and it's my fault. So I apologize. Cade Cunningham with back-to-back dominant games. I highlighted his defensive impact after the Orlando game, which I thought needed to be done. I think not for Pistons fans. I think Pistons fans know this, but 30 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 blocks versus the Magic. And then last night, how about 21 points and 18 assists? You called for a Jalen Duren 2020 game last year, O2. Why did you not call for a Cade Cunningham 2020 game in 25-26? 6 rebounds and 3 steals versus the Mavs. The biggest numbers here, as Wes puts it in all caps, no turnovers versus Orlando, 1 turnover versus Dallas, a 28-1 assist to turnover ratio these past 2 games. The shooting efficiency, yeah, but everything else about Cade Cunningham's game looks really good.
Yeah, there's always the question of, why does he get off to slightly slow starts during the season? And honestly, we could debate that, but I think the bottom line is that, he's turned that corner, and his last 2 games, I think he dominated in different ways, but it just shows how cerebral of a player he could be, and just the number of different ways that he could kill you. Like the shot blocking that was on display against Orlando. again, I think it's a reminder that he's been one of the better shot blocking guards in the league for a while. Like he's a chase down artist too. I don't think he had a chase down block in that Orlando game, but I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for by the chase downs he's able to get as well. Yeah, and then like just from the jump last night in Mexico, the chemistry between him and Duren was all the way dialed in. Just lob after lob, but he was doing a bit of everything with the ball too. I mean, 18 assists and 1 turnover. That's got to be one of the best ratios of his career. I know he had some similar games last season, but just really impressive pair of games from him. I think that's kind of what's going unsaid by us through, this entire thread of the Pistons being 4-2. But, I think Cade is just the type of player that, is going to guarantee you a high floor as well when he's playing the way he's playing now, just because there's just so many ways he can impact the game to help you win that, even if the shooting percentages aren't quite elite, like just from a playmaking standpoint, defensive standpoint, he's doing so much other stuff, opening up lanes for Duren, who's handling some of the playmaking, all that stuff is a net positive for the offense. And these last 2 games have really shown that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of filtering stuff here just to see guys in the league that are putting up numbers like this. And if you just look at the points, assists, and rebounds, LaMelo Ball and Austin Reeves are the only guys that are putting up what Cade is. If you add the 1 steal and the 1 block per game, which is actually something I know I predicted. I don't know if you did as well. Tyrese Maxey is the only guy that's averaging the assists that Cade is, along with the steal and a block. There's just going to be a lot of this that will be fun to do once we get more into the season. I think the thing is, eventually he's going to start putting the ball in the basket better, right? He's 40% from the field. He's 27% from the 3-point line. Even the free throw percentage, somebody brought that up earlier, is just at 78%. So I think once he gets that going, things will be good. What do you think? What have you thought about just the process the last couple of games?
Yeah, I think he's playing with a patience and a confidence that we see typically from him when he's engaged the way he's been. Like last night, I thought he just really assertively picked his spots, and it's just satisfying to watch when he's kind of playing at that in between place, finding lanes to the rim. He hasn't even really leaned, the 3-point shot hasn't fallen for him, but I feel like he also hasn't leaned on it, especially much, which, also I think is a unique aspect of him. He was 2 of 4 from 3 last night. He got 16 shot attempts, so not that big of a percentage. The only other issue, and this is a perpetual topic, is that, he just doesn't get to the line enough, and I don't think it's entirely his fault, but that, I think that also goes into the efficiency discussion with him. If he's getting to the line 1 or 2 more times per game, I think that offsets, maybe the underwhelming percentages from inside the arc a bit. I think the 3-point percentage will pick up over the year goes on. He's much better than a 27% shooter from 3. But his process overall has just been great. Not forcing it, but also, especially compared to the first few games, picking his spots and being assertive with the ball when he needs to be.
Our guy buying, 10:32 p.m. from Jakarta, Indonesia. So appreciate you joining us here late at night.
Indonesia in the house. Okay.
Over in Indonesia. Always enjoy people letting us know where they're watching from. Just some synergy numbers on Cade real quick here. He's 7 of 26 on 3-point dribble jumpers, and he's 5 of 19 on 2-point dribble jumpers. So I think the biggest thing right now is he's not making his shot off the bounce from the 3-point line or from the 2-point. So eventually that will go. Let me pull up last year's numbers real quick here in terms of both of those stats. So last year he was 50% on 2-point dribble jumpers. So obviously just a slow start with that. And he actually was even 32% on 3-point dribble jumpers last year. So I think that's the big thing in terms of his scoring once he gets that going a little bit. The other thing I'll say is we haven't seen the little runner floater game a whole lot, and he hasn't knocked down his hook shot. He was 50% on both of those last years, the runner floater type shot and the hook, especially out of his post up. So far this year, he's only shot 12 of those. On the runner, he's actually 4 of 7, so 57%, but he's only taken 5 of the hook shots. So just not a lot of sample on those two. I think he'll get into his rhythm scoring the basketball. my biggest thing with the passing, somebody asked why, like, why does he not turn it over? I think he just trusts the reads. I think early in the season, he was going, well, that's Ron Holland over there in the weak side corner. If I pass it to him, he might miss the shot or he might travel, which is a huge Ron Holland thing. He's got to get his feet ready on these attacks off the catch. It's like one time a game. Or it's Asar or whoever. I put in my notes a few games ago, just make the play and see if they can figure it out. And I think that's what he's done, is he's just trusted that I'm going to make the right play and then let my teammates either make the shot or attack the closeout or whatever it will be. But he's just trusting those decisions. And when he does that, we see what the results can be with this 28-1 assist to turnover ratio. As the chat brings up, sounds like maybe that one turnover was even a shot clock violation. So it's not even like now I will say he had a couple passes that got deflected that they just came up with. Those type of things are going to happen, but I think he'll be okay. YouTube user says Cade's percentage will always be lower than a lot of guys because of volume and shot difficulty. I agree. And it does seem like the shot difficulty is even more so this year. But if you're going to be face of the franchise, if you're going to be all NBA, it's got to be better percentages than this. So I expect it to go up. I expect him to have a big game that gets him going at some point. Let's talk about, we talked a little bit about Duncan Robinson, but let's finish up here and then we can get into Ron Holland, other things. 10 of 17 from three since the last time we recorded, 2-game sample. Seems like he's figured it out a little bit in terms of shooting the ball. The defense is actually worse than I thought it was going to be. 0-2 somehow. But yeah, I think seeing him knock down shots is good.
Yeah, that's the main thing with Duncan, is that he's got to knock down shots for this team. Bottom line, and he's done that. Like I said earlier, outside of that 0-5 start, against the Chicago game, he's 15, I believe, of 32 from three at the time since then, which I forget the exact percentage. I read it last night, but it's pretty close to 50%, obviously, which is really great. Defensively, it has been rough, and I think it's been even more accentuated by the fact that teams have relentlessly hunted him and exposed that. But even with that, the Pistons have been, a top 10 defense so far, which obviously is very encouraging, and it helps when you have guys like Asar, who can, and Bron, just from a rotation standpoint, I think you can kind of minimize and hide Duncan to an extent. But there's still that push-pull where, you can't play Duncan too little because you need his spacing and his shooting. It's just too important for stretches of this offense. When a lot of nights the only other significant gravity outside of Cade is just, Duren in the paint. And, and that's been great too, but you need both. So, yeah, I think my main takeaway, even though he struggled defensively, they've still been a good defensive team. Now, when you introduce, Ivy and Sass to their rotation, maybe it gets a bit tougher, just because you're losing a bit of that size on the perimeter with those two. But bottom line for Duncan, he's got to knock down shots. He's done that. As long as he continues to do that, I think they will be able to live with what he's given up defensively.
Okay, so a couple corrections here. Our guy Keith Black Trudeau with a good one. Cade had that silly behind the back pass attempt in transition. That was that was the turnover. That was just
Steph Curry.
Yeah, that was a bad decision. That was a little frustrating because it was a 3-on-1, and our guy Chili went and found it. I think he copy and pasted this from probably the NBA.com play-by-play. Pistons fan 11 brings up the numbers I gave last episode. I'll do that again just because I don't expect that everybody listens to every episode, but I think it gives fans an idea of, okay, where was Duncan Robinson successful last year with Miami? So he got his most 3-point attempts in spot-up situations where he was 40%. The next was off handoffs where he was 37%. As a pick-and-roll ball handler, which we have not seen, I don't think, this year, he was also 37%. And then he was over 50% in transition. This is the one where I thought we would see more because this was the Tim Hardaway Jr. I feel like Tim Hardaway Jr. got a lot of, and Beasley as well. His lowest percentage in terms of 3-point attempts on any sort of volume is off screens. He was 28% on 60 attempts last year coming off screens. And then he was 44% on 23 attempts as pick and roll man, which means pick and pop or ghost. So just to give Pistons fans some perspective on at least last season where Duncan had the most success with the Miami Heat. Here are this year's numbers, Omari. Where do you think he shot the best percentage in terms of those play types? Spot up, transition, off screens, etc.
My guess would be spot up.
Spot up. Guess what he is on spot up? 67% on spot up threes. In transition, he is 2 of 8. Off screens, he is 2 of 6. Handoffs, he's 0 of 3. I was wrong. Synergy has him tracked as 4 pick and roll ball handler reps, 0 of 4. So he is a combined 4 for 21, if my quick math is right, on every play type other than spot ups. But on spot ups, he is 67%. My takeaway, get Duncan Robinson more spot up attempts.
Yeah, and that's the distinct difference between him and Malik Beasley is that, Beasley was did a lot of his work off of screens, and and that's fine. Like, I think you make adjustments in the the playbook for that, and I think we've seen Duncan lean more into spot ups where he really doesn't need any space at all. Like, once his feet are set, he's monitoring, he gets it off so cleanly. But 67%, I mean, yeah, shake off preseason in that first game, and he's been every bit the elite shooter that they need him to be. And I think with upside too, because his shot quality, I think, has gotten better game by game.
So let's go to break. When we come back, we got a few other guys to talk about here. We can talk about Ron Holland. Got to give Isaiah Stewart a little bit of love before we move on, and then we can look a little bit at the week ahead. But we'll get into that right after this.
All right, we're back with segment 3. Let's just give Isaiah Stewart some love real quick because we've kind of hinted at it through the first few episodes of the season, but Beef Stew's been great. I think he's been even better defensively than he was last year, which is saying something because he was great last year. He's had one block a night that's just wow, just absolutely pancaking dudes at the rim. The 3-point shooting, he's been willing and he's been able, and I think that's exactly what you want. Just all around great. He continues to find ways to maximize every minute he's on the floor, and again, just like last season, he's really been the backbone of their entire defense. You know
what I'm already tracking is if he's going to be eligible for all defense.
Yeah,
because even though he's averaging 22 minutes a night, in their 6 games, he's only played 20 minutes in 4 of them. So we're already 4 out of 6. Wes, what is 66% of 82? Is that enough to get you? That is not enough. Yeah, it's not even close. That is not enough to get you the 65 games you would need. So if he continues to only play 20 minutes in 66% of their games, and that's him. If he plays all 82, he's still not going to get to 65. Because here's what I want, O2. Here's what I want the national media talking about at the end of the season with the Detroit Pistons. Which of Asar Thompson and Isaiah Stewart are you putting on your all defensive teams, or are you putting both of them? That's what I want the conversation to be, because right now he's playing at an all defense level. He has been incredible. Somebody said it earlier, and then I just responded in the chat. But I put it in my game notes. Why do people keep testing him? Why do they not try something else? Try to shoot a little floater or something. He can block it with either hand. His timing is impeccable. He is really, really good. And he's even though the 2-point numbers are down, he is almost at 10 points a game. The 3-point percentage or the 3-point shot has looked good. The percentages as well. It's low volume. 6 rebounds. This is a very good basketball player to have on your team.
Yeah, and I feel like we've said for a while now, a guy like him, his value will shine in the playoffs just because you can't conceivably play him off of the floor in any lineup. He's going to be able to stick with, whoever you put on the floor opposite of him. But, we don't even need to get to the playoffs to have that discussion. He's been one of, to me, the most valuable centers in basketball this season. I mean, the floor spacing, the defense, it seems like the game is moving 20% slower to him than like everyone else at certain points. Like, and it works in his favor too. That he's 6'8", 6'9", not like an amazing leaper. I think that's why teams continue to try him, just because. Like you look at Wemby and it's like, okay, yeah, like I'm going to get packed if I try him. Some of the guys trying to dunk on Isaiah Stewart are like not that much smaller than him, but he's got a massive wingspan and, like you said, impeccable timing, and he's going to extend every inch of arm span he possibly has to get to that ball. And like I said, once a night, like there's just been a block that's just like, why would you even put yourself in a position to get embarrassed like that? Because he's consistently done it to dudes. So great start to the season. I think he's as good as Asar has been defensively. I think Beef Stew's been the backbone of this team. And another advantage of him playing more minutes at the 4 is that it gives him a few more minutes, and maybe that will, in the end, get him close enough to being in a DPOY conversation. The rules are a little bit too strict for that. No, that's another discussion. But I wouldn't be surprised if the coaching staff was like, we got to make him awards eligible. And if we got to play him and Duren 2 minutes a night together to make it happen, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, the chat is touching on it. YouTube user Stu has no fear. Keith Black Trudeau. Stu has the best mentality a shot blocker can have. He's not afraid to get dunked on. That's exactly right. You can see dudes get out of the way in certain situations. Even some of the better players get out of the way. Stu is never going to get out of the way. And because of that, he's going to get dunked on. He is going to. And that's a problem sometimes with this as well. The larger like NBA fans and whatever, they still only know Stu from the LeBron James incident. They still will see him get dunked on because that's what shows up on SportsCenter. This is why I push back so hard on the Adam Silver highlight league comment, because my students are going to see Stewart get dunked on by Giannis, and that's all they're going to see about Isaiah Stewart. They're not going to see all of the other things he does. You have to really watch a full 48 minutes of Detroit Pistons basketball to understand who he is as a defensive player. As Wes brings up, such a luxury to have him off the bench. I do worry that will hurt his all defensive team argument as well. People will be like, well, if he's so good, why doesn't he start? But got to think that a guy gets into the best defensive centers list would start on most other teams. 48 minutes of awesome center play in Detroit. The fun part with Stu and dunks is that the other guys want to poster one of the best shot blockers in the league. It's a pride thing. And so I'm interested to see, when do guys start making different decisions? Like, that's what's great about Wemby. That's always my argument about Gobert, even though he's starting to fall off a little bit. But like, when do guys start? Because that's when your impact is really felt. When you can see other people changing their decisions on a rim attack because you're there. And maybe players never will, and he'll get to continue to reject them. We have German says, greetings from Germany. I'm sorry. I'm not going to butcher your town. I'm so sorry. I'll just be an embarrassment. So I apologize. But the small town where Dirk was born and played, shout out to Jalen Duren, and especially his almost unbelievable free throw shooting. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you so much. We are all over the globe this morning, which we appreciate a lot. Should we touch on Asar a little bit? The chat's talked a lot about this game being in Mexico City, the altitude, the conditioning, all of that. But anything else with Asar? I feel like he's had a good start to the year. Not like crazy, but speaking of Duren's free throw shooting, he's at 85%, for those wondering. Asar's been good. He's been good. I don't know that I have some overwhelming thoughts on him, but I think he's been good. Are you anywhere different with that?
I think he's been good. I think there's a bit of consistency with his game. I will say game by game, I think his performance with the ball has kind of varied just depending on game flow and matchups and whatnot, and that's to be expected. But I will say it's been encouraging to see him knock down a couple threes through the early going of the season. One knock on of them not having quite enough floor spacers is that probably a few too many possessions end up with the ball in the Sar's hands on the perimeter with 3 seconds left, which is not necessarily what you want, but it's also put him in positions where he's had to take the threes, and a few of them have fallen. So, I think that's good. He's taking care of the ball. He's still playing excellent defense. I feel like the last 2 games, he's kind of weirdly had a lot of shots at the rim not go. And I think against, Orlando, some of that was just, putbacks that just weren't going down for whatever reason. But other than that, he's another guy. Where is he going to be, at the end of November, the end of December? Especially as far as the shot, definitely want to continue to see him go with that turnaround mid-range jumper. If you're not going to hit threes, then, I think you need to at least do that. The other thing with him is just free throw shooting. And that was one thing I kind of mentioned coming into the season, but he's a guy that could get to the line a lot, but doesn't knock down free throws as well as you would like. And even just getting that, north of 70%, I believe would be huge. So it's still small stuff with him that can improve. But overall, he's been a star, doing all the Asar stuff you need to win. And he's factored, I think, into their high floor as a team as well. Just him in the starting lineup, he's going to give you a baseline and the intangible stuff that adds up over the course of the game.
Yeah, and as Wes brings up, the turnover numbers are low. So he's up at, he's still at 28 minutes a night. I think this is probably what we would expect coming out of, and he plays so hard. I think the chat mentioned him taking the other team's best player. I was so ready for him to come into the game and guard D'Angelo Russell because nobody else could do it. And as soon as Ron Holland, God bless him, got on D'Angelo Russell, he lost him, and Russell knocked down another 3. So I think, it is nice having a player like Asar on your team that when a player gets going like that, you feel like, hey, we can put this guy on him and he's going to shut that water off a little bit. But 3.5 assists, 1.2 turnovers. I think that's a great number for a guy that's in a new role and is being asked to handle the ball as much as he is. I still have some concerns. I think the handle's loose at times. He has some room to grow. And I also agree, O2, keep shooting the little, I call it short mid-ranges. He doesn't shoot a true floater, but in that area, away from the rim, I don't necessarily need him taking 15-foot mid-range pull-ups, but in that 6 to 8 to 10, maybe 12, jump higher than everybody else and shoot it. Stay with it. I'm all in on that. And Keith brings up 2 of 3 on corner threes on the season. So even if you can hit one of those every once in a while, keep things interesting. Let's finish off looking ahead. So they have the Grizzlies, the Jazz, and the Nets at the very least before we record next. My football season ended on Friday, so my schedule opens up a little bit. Sunday mornings are a little bit more doable now. So a lot will just depend on if they don't play on Sunday, my guess is we'll record Sunday mornings. If they do play on Sunday, then obviously it might be Monday night or something. But it kind of depends on their schedule. But any of those games, the Nets game is game 1 of the NBA Cup. Any of those matchups that kind of interest you, either from a matchup perspective, something about the other team, or anything like that?
Yeah. So Desmond Bane on the Memphis Grizzlies seemed like he always torched the Pistons for whatever. And now he's, now they've already got, Bane out the way in Orlando. And, Grizzlies seem like they may be a bit vulnerable right now with some of the drama with Ja. For those who don't know.
That's new, right? That never happens.
Yeah, he, is having a public spat with the coaching staff, and he got suspended. So that'll be his first game back tomorrow on Monday. And again, they just seem like they're pretty vulnerable. It seems like a game where the Pistons should be able to feast on the interior. Jaren, one of my favorite players, obviously a Michigan State Spartan. Got to watch out for him. But that's a winnable game. Utah's a winnable game. Brooklyn, of course, is a winnable game. So what stands out, really, I think this is a week you want to see them, at least go 2-1, if not 3-0. It's a relatively soft stretch of the schedule, especially compared to how things started off. The week after that, you've got the Sixers twice and then the Bulls. I don't think anybody would have had them on top of the conference coming into the season, but, those are some tough games. So you're 4-2. You have a real opportunity this upcoming week to build some cushion and really build some early season momentum, for the first time in a long time. So vulnerable patch of the schedule, one that they can ideally take advantage of.
Yeah. So Grizzlies are -3 at 3-3 this year. Their net rating. The Utah Jazz are actually just pretty much right at neutral. And then obviously the Brooklyn Nets. Well, actually, they're not the worst net rating in the NBA. The New Orleans Pelicans are. New Orleans Pelicans, man. Go trade for Jordan Hawkins. Trajan, you want a movement shooter? Before we make the big move, you want just a little small move to get, a movement shooter in here. If Chaz isn't going to play, go take a flyer on Jordan Hawkins and see if he can run around off some screens and do a version of what Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. did. Again, a version of that, obviously not that level. And then, we'll go get Trey Murphy whenever the stock is at its lowest point and you don't have to trade as much and bring in that number 2 option. But anyway, then the Nets, obviously not a team that's really trying to win necessarily. The roster is definitely not built to win. So a real opportunity here. I think the matchup I'm looking forward to is that Jazz game, though. The Jazz are kind of fun. Lowry is awesome. Obviously, that is going to generate some conversation. That's going to generate some conversation with the fan base in terms of Lowry Markkanen. Walker Kessler versus Jalen Duren will be a great matchup. That is another guy in the draft class that did not get his rookie extension this offseason. So a great opportunity for Duren to dominate that matchup, or at least try to. And that Utah team runs some good stuff. So I think that's the game I'm excited to watch. Utah, again, is a team that maybe isn't trying to win at the highest level, but they run some good stuff. Right now, they're playing neutral based on their net rating and all of that.
They're not a bad team, I don't think.
No. Their talent's a little all over the place and all of that. Keith brings up, what's worse than being the worst team in the NBA? Being the worst team and having already traded your draft pick. Here's the funny thing about the Pelicans. Not only did they trade that pick to the Hawks, the other pick they used to go up in Derek Queen, do you know who they sent that to? The Indiana Pacers. They sent the Pacers back their 2026 draft pick so that they could get back in at 23 and 25, which they use also to get up to draft Derek Queen. And the Pacers right now are one of the worst teams in the NBA via record. I think maybe if they get healthy, that'll improve a little bit. But essentially my point is they could have 2 of the 3 best draft picks right now in November in the 2026 draft, and they don't have either of them because, of course, they don't. They didn't even protect the pick like they did when they traded for Isaiah Stewart. It's incredible stuff. Omari, before we get out of here, thoughts on where the Pistons are at in the East right now, or just kind of like the East in general? I'm going to talk about this on Game Theory tonight, how I think it's wide open, and I wonder if that encourages teams to go make moves earlier in the East. But the Bulls, at time of recording, 5-0, Sixers 4-1, Bucks 4-2. Detroit is 4th. You have the Heat, the Hawks, who are going to be without Trae Young for a month. The Cavs, injuries, and 500. The Magic, the Knicks are at 2-3. What is the Eastern Conference?
It seems like there's 10 teams all kind of stacked right on top of each other right now, except the Bulls, who are 5-0, and Philly, who is 4-1. Again, I don't think anybody would add those 2 teams on top, but I think if you're the Pistons, you feel great. The Cavs haven't gotten off to an amazing start. The Knicks haven't gotten off to an amazing start. You've already picked up, some wins over, some of these teams that are right in the mix there with you. Orlando, obviously, being toward the top of that list. So you've got to feel good. Right now, the Pistons are tied with the Bucks at 4-2. Just a game and a half behind the Bulls at 5-0. You've got to feel good if you're the Pistons. You're hitting your stride right now, and you've got some winnable games coming up. You look at the rest of the conference, and a lot of teams are still actively figuring things out. Most of the conference right now is a game within a game of 500. It's not till you get to past the Knicks and you're in the Hornets, Pacers, Wizards tier that there's a significant gap. But long story short, Pistons should feel good about where they're at.
Yeah, I think it's been a good start. Like we said, the floor for this team is solid, especially in games that Cade Cunningham plays. And it could be a really big week for them because I think a stretch of they're on a 2-game winning streak right now. And so you go out and you get 3 this week, you knock off all of the Grizzlies, Jazz, and Nets, and you go on a little 5-game winning streak there. You're setting yourself up in a good spot. That would put them, 9 games into the year. You're 7-3, 8-2, 10 games in. That's a really good start to the year for the Pistons. So I like where they're at. We'll see how Karras continues to integrate back in. And yeah, any final thoughts, O2?
No final thoughts. If you're the Pistons, if you're a Pistons fan, well, you probably feel pretty good about this. I mentioned it on Twitter the other day, but we weren't even all the way done with the Chicago Bulls game. And I had people saying, 0-4 start coming, 0-5 start coming. And they're 4-2. So again, I think anybody would have taken, this record through the first 2 weeks of the year. Next 2 weeks will reveal a lot about their ability to sustain and of some of the red flags we talked about as far as 3-point shooting and whatnot end up becoming more severe. But otherwise, good start to the year. Next time we record, we'll see if we can keep the good vibes going or if there's going to be some other stuff we got to, reveal to take care of. So good start.
As Wes mentioned, they started 0-5 last year, but yeah, figuring out a little bit. We'll see where we're at next week. What's the schedule? Do they play on Sunday next week or no?
They do play on the 9th. They have a 7:30 road game. They actually have a back-to-back on the 9th and 10th. They come on the cover. Then play the Wizards that Monday. So might be a Tuesday recording.
Probably be a Tuesday recording then, guys, with that schedule, which would put us through the Sixers and the Wizards. I guess there's a world where we could record on Saturday, but we'll see. So if it's not Saturday, then if you'd like to join us live, usually we try to get it up on YouTube fairly early enough that you can figure it out and find us. I would say either Saturday sometime, or my guess is most likely right now, you would be looking at a Tuesday evening recording, which would get us 5 games stretch. We'd have a really good sample at that point, obviously 11 games. And while you can't know everything about a team, 11 games into a year, that's starting to be a pretty good sample size for the guys that have played the majority of those games. So thank you everybody that joined us live. We love your guys' conversation and your comments and opinions and everything you throw into the chat. It really does help drive the conversation of the podcast and the way that you guys want your content. So thank you for that. Of course, if you're listening on podcasts after the fact, we enjoy that as well and appreciate you so much. Continue to support Omari at the Free Press, Wes and Blake over on the Pin Down as Royce. This plays right into Omari's conversation that this kid, I swear he's going to put on a shirt. See, he's getting a shirt. Royce, hold up the shirt. Hold up the shirt.
I don't think Royce has any shirts.
He grabbed shorts. He grabbed shorts. All right. Get us out of here, O2.
All right. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robert Chad, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, our executive producer, Bill Bradley, and big shout out to Wes Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.